Okay, here we go. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Shalom Rav al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Ki ata hu melech Adon lecho hashalom. Ki kadosh ha-melech Adon lecho hashalom. Shalom Rav Am Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Am Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. V'tov b'neicha levarech et Amcha Yisrael b'chol עת ובכל שעה בשלומך. Shalom Rav Am Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Shalom Rav Al Yisrael Amcha Ta'asim Le'olam. Ta'asim Le'olam. Ta'asim Le'olam.
Beautiful as usual, Gary. Fantastic.
Finally.
I don't think, Ruth, you were here last week. We missed you. So do you mind starting tonight? This is the final chapters of Genesis. We're closing it out. We're going to say goodbye to Jacob, and he's going to bless all his sons.
All right, here we go. Jacob lived in the land of Egypt for 17 years. Jacob's days, the years of his life, were 147. When Israel's time to die drew near, he summoned his son Joseph and said to him, "If I have but found favor in your sight, please put your hand under my thigh and treat me with faithful kindness. Please do not bury me in Egypt. When I am laid to rest with my ancestors, carry me out of Egypt and bury me in their burial place." He replied, "I will do as you say." He said, "Swear it to me." So Joseph swore it to him. Israel then bowed down at the head of the bed. After these things, they said to Joseph, "Look, your father is fading." So he took his two sons with him, Ephraim and Manasseh. When they told Jacob, saying, "Look, your son Joseph has come," Israel rallied and sat up in the bed. Jacob said to Joseph, "El Shaddai appeared to me in Luz in the land of Canaan and blessed me, saying to me, 'Behold, I will make you fruitful and multiply you. I will make you a multitude of peoples, and I will give you this land to your seed after you in an everlasting possession.' Now then, your two sons born to you in the land of Egypt before my arrival in Egypt, they are mine. Ephraim and Manasseh will be to me like Reuben and Simon. But your progeny, whom you engendered after them, are yours. They will be called by their brothers' names in their family allotment. And I, as I was coming from Padan, Rachel died in the land of Canaan, on the road, only a stretch of ground before reaching Ephrath. I buried her there on the way to Ephrath. That is Bethlehem." When Israel saw Joseph's sons, he asked, "Who are these?" And Joseph said to his father, "They are my sons, whom God has given me here." He, Jacob, said, "Bring them to me, pray that I may bless them." Israel's eyes had grown clouded with age. He could no longer see. Joseph brought them over to him, whereupon he kissed and hugged them. Israel then said to Joseph, "I never expected to see your face again, and here God has shown me your progeny as well." Joseph then removed them from his knees and bowed down before him to the ground. Then Joseph took the two of them, Ephraim in his right hand to Israel's left, and Manasseh with his left hand to Israel's right. And he brought them close to him. But Israel stretched out his right hand and placed it on Ephraim's head. even though he was the younger, and his left hand on Manasseh's head, crossing his arms, though Manasseh was the firstborn. He then blessed Joseph, saying, "The God before whom walked my fathers Abraham and Isaac, the God who has shepherded me ever since I came into being until this day, the angel who has rescued me from all harm, bless these lads. Through them, let my name and the name of my fathers Abraham and Isaac ever be recalled, and let them greatly multiply within the land." When Joseph saw that his father had placed his right hand on Ephraim's head, it seemed wrong to him. So he took hold of his father's hand to move it from Ephraim's head onto the head of Manasseh. Joseph said to his father, "Not that way, father. This is the firstborn. Put your right hand on his, wait a minute, right hand on his head." But his father refused, saying, "I know, my son, I know. He too shall become a people, and he too shall be great. Yet his younger brother shall be greater than he, and his seed shall become a multitude of nations." So he blessed them that day, saying, "By you shall the people of Israel give their blessing, saying, may God make you like Ephraim and Manasseh." And he put Ephraim ahead of Manasseh. I'd like to ask a couple of questions here.
Yeah.
If he was really hardly able to see because he was going blind, how did he know all who was who?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
I don't know. I can only guess. I mean, it's,
Yeah.
we don't know how old Ephraim is or Manasseh is, right? I think.
Well, one was, they said, was younger than the other,
Yeah.
and Manasseh was
Maybe.
the younger one. Yeah.
Maybe
But he
one
did
might
it
have
purposely, though.
I know.
He
Well,
did
just-
it purposely.
Oh, he did it purposely. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's what we read. I shouldn't have jumped, but I thought we already had read that. But
Right.
That's
okay.
right. And I think doesn't that harken back to Jacob himself and his brother Esau? I mean, doesn't
Yeah,
it
that's
feel
true.
that we're
It does
looking at
bring
this a
back
little bit?
that whole scenario. Yeah.
But
Yeah.
the difference is that in this case, there was no attempt to hide or change somebody and make the father think that he was somebody that he wasn't. In
Right.
this case, I think it was either by feel or by smell or by instinct or gut reaction. He knew what he was doing.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. It's kind of one of those things that's just like, and then for Joseph to try to interject, not that way, Father, it's kind of funny. It's like, he's Jacob, hey, let him do what he's going to do.
Yeah.
He's Jacob. The whole thing to me too last week was like how God told Jacob, go into Egypt. I'm going to be with your people there, and I'm going to bring you out of Egypt too. I mean, Jacob had that whole revelation. And the one last thing was, do you remember how many people went into Egypt from Canaan? How many people were Jacob's sons and daughters?
70.
Yes, 70. And we're going to listen, and I don't know the number, but it's in the hundreds of thousands, right? When they come out of Egypt, it's
Yeah.
Well, depending upon who you ask, it's anywhere from 2 million to 3 million.
Oh, millions. Wow.
Well,
Incredible.
but you remember that it said that 600,000 people, were of military age.
Okay.
So then when you have to start multiplying, sons, daughters, and people that are older, depending upon who you ask, there's about 2 to 3 million.
And then a lot of people were born during that whole thing.
Oh, absolutely. We're there
Yeah,
for
right.
years.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to take a guess as to why Jacob was sort of kind of able to see a little bit. Okay, one thing is to be going blind. When you're going blind, you can't see anything at all. I think that he had cataracts.
Uh-huh.
Now, when you have cataracts, essentially what happens is you see shadows because your vision becomes opaque, but you can
Right.
see heads and you can see, the profile of everybody. Probably this is what is going on here.
Mm-hmm.
It makes sense.
That makes sense. Yeah.
It does. It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
Great.
Well, we don't know if he had cataracts, but I just want you to know that it could be a lot of different types of eye diseases.
But in
Oh, I'm
this
sorry,
case,
Ruth.
chances
Yeah.
are that it would be cataracts because they had no cure for them.
Yeah, right.
Okay.
But I'm saying there's other diseases that make you blind other than cataracts.
Yeah.
Okay. Who does Myrna, would you want to take it at number 21?
Anyway, Israel then said to Joseph, I am dying now, but God will be with you and bring you back to the land of your ancestors. And I have given you, first among your brothers, the Shechem mountain ridge, which I won from the Amorites with my sword and my bow. Jacob then summoned his sons, saying, gather round, that I may tell you what shall befall to you in the days to come. Assemble and hearken, O sons of Jacob. Hearken to Israel, your father. Reuben, my firstborn, you are my strength and first fruit of my vigor, excessive in exalting yourself. Excessive in strength, because I got yourself. Licentious one, boil up like water, no more. Oh, you mounted your father's bed, then defiled my couch. He mounted my couch. Okay. Simeon and Levi are partners. Instruments of violence are their plan. Let me not enter their council, nor let my being join their assembly. For they killed a man in their wrath, and in their whim hamstrung an ox. Cursed is their wrath so fierce, and their fury so harsh. I will disperse them in Jacob, scatter them in Israel. You, Judah, your brothers shall heap praise on you, your hand on the neck of your foes. Your father's sons shall bow down to you. Judah is a lion's cub. What was that?
Hello. I don't know whose phone that is. That's okay.
You flourish, my son, from the prey. He kneels, crouches like a lion, like a lioness who dares stir him up. The staff shall not depart from Judah, nor the scepter from between his legs. This is getting very complicated.
Yeah. And isn't King David from Judah? Isn't that where we get a lot of this? And yeah.
But I mean, they had such specific things allocated to everybody. He certainly knew their temperaments, and just knew who should do what. I think that's amazing. And he had a lot of kids at the same time.
That's right.
I mean, this is really very well thought out. But I also think he had God helping him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, Jacob of all the people. And this reminds me, Dr. Ed, remember when we were in the hospital when we went to Israel last year, and what was it, the Chagall windows?
Oh yeah.
And they each, Dr. Ed, you're muted, but they had 12 tribes of Israel in the Chagall windows, and a lot of this imagery was in the windows, and
they're amazing, aren't they?
Yeah, beautiful. I remember when I was in Israel seeing that too. Yeah, it was just beautiful.
It's one of the things people make sure you see, and it's just, I mean, I've seen them on cards for so long. It was amazing to finally see them in the glass.
Yes, yes.
Yeah. It was a beautiful place.
Oh.
There, he's got it. He's got the
Oh,
photo.
that's
Let me
beautiful.
see if I can make you full screen. Hold on. Stop sharing.
Wow.
Stop sharing.
What happened?
Oh yeah.
He's gonna try and show us that picture bigger.
Oh, nice.
Oh,
I don't see it yet.
Oh, there it is.
Oh, yes, I
wow.
remember that. Yes,
That's a
yes.
photo that you took, right, Dr. Ed? Is that
Yeah,
right?
we all took them.
Yeah, I know.
Very
That's
nice.
And there's more. I mean, we all have
there
them.
you go. Yeah. 'Cause
wow.
they surround the
beautiful.
the four sides of that.
Yes, it is
the
gorgeous.
synagogue or
I found the colors so intense.
One more.
Amazing.
They were
Wow.
breathtaking.
Absolutely.
Yes.
yeah.
Does it tell you the names of each one, or do you have to guess by the symbols?
I'll look at it now. I
think it was written in Hebrew. I think it was written in Hebrew, if I remember.
Yeah, either the first initial of the son
Of each tribe,
yeah.
yes, if I remember.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, in the corner.
Yes,
right.
in the corner. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
How cool is that?
Yeah, pretty
And they're
great.
bulletproof.
Whoa.
Is that right? Is that right?
Yeah, they're bulletproof. They're bullet and bomb proof. And it's very ironic that the 12 tribes of peace have to have bulletproof windows.
Mhm.
Do you remember what year Chagall painted them?
No, I don't. I can look it up for you.
Yeah, that's always allowed.
That's what
Always
Google
going to
is for.
Google is good.
Google, Google, Google.
The biggest thing I remember was that I think it was the one time that the state of Israel approached Chagall as an artist and said, "We'd like you to," or I don't know if it was the state of Israel, but it was some group within Israel, and they asked him to you know, they commissioned him to do something, or they just kind of threw out the idea, "Would you do something for Israel," essentially? And he said, "This is great. Yeah, of course I would." You know, it's like the first time I think somebody actually, if I have that right, Dr. Ed, definitely correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that was one of the things. Like, he was a big artist and everyone knew him, but no one really came and said, "Will you do something?" Is that?
Yeah, 1977,
Really?
Wow.
which is very interesting.
Very late. Yeah.
Did you think it was earlier?
I thought
I thought it was earlier. Yeah.
True,
Yeah.
that's why I'm saying that. But they are amazing.
Yeah, it's fascinating.
if you try to find Chagall's headstone, his burial place, as one of the greatest Jewish artists, it's in a Catholic cemetery.
That's
Really?
interesting. Wow. Why is that?
His second wife or whatever, he died. He predeceased her, and she died, and she buried him there so she could be buried next to him.
Wow.
Interesting. Where in Israel?
No, in Paris.
Oh, in Paris.
Oh.
Right.
And Ed, she could not be buried in a Jewish cemetery if she wanted.
I don't know. I don't know. Maybe I'll do some research. I never really wondered, but we should do some research and find out. Chagall's prints are now being sold all over the world, and they're very interesting. If they're signed, they're worth a fortune.
Can we pick it up at 10, Myrna?
Oh, at 10, I was just, right.
We go back a
You
little
didn't
bit.
get that far down, huh?
We did, but we need to turn the page between us
All right,
once
okay.
we get
The
between.
staff shall not depart from Judah, nor the scepter from between his legs, until he comes to Shiloh, and the people's fealty is his. He tethers his ass to a vine, his ass's foal to the choicest vine. He cleanses his garments in wine, his robe with the blood of grapes. Eyes that sparkle with wine, teeth whitened by milk. Zebulun shall dwell at the seashore. He will be a harbor for ships, with his farthest reach near Sidon. Issachar, a bony donkey, lies between the folds. That doesn't sound very flattering. He saw how good was the resting place and how pleasant the ground. So he bent his shoulder to the burden to be subjected to forced labor. Dan will plead his people's cause as one of Israel's tribes. This was really very well thought out.
Yeah.
Oh my. Let Dan be a snake on the road, a horned serpent on the path, biting the horse's heels, so its rider tumbles backward. I await your help, Eternal One. Gad shall be raided by raiders, but shall raid their rear guard. Asher, his food is fat. He provides delicacies for a king. Naphtali, a mountain you born, bears lovely lambs in the folds. Joseph is a wild she-ass's son, a wild she-ass's son by a spring, the wild she-asses at Shur. They harassed him, shot arrows at him. The archers were foes to him, yet steady stayed his bow, quick his arms, through the mighty one of Jacob, through the shepherd, Israel's rock. This is very confusing to me.
Right,
My
go ahead, Dr. Ed, and then Gary. I think Gary's had a good point. Yeah, go ahead.
I've read this before in getting ready, and I read it and overlooked at it again and said, what's he wasting my time for? Just what is he wasting my time with this craziness, Mishigas?
Hmm.
And then it occurred to me last night as I was really thinking about it. And this is my interpretation. What he's doing is he didn't care about what was happening and what it meant at the time. It means so much right now as Israel is trying to show the rest of the world, and especially the Arab world, that we've been here a very long time, and each tribe was in Israel well before the Palestinians. And now it becomes very, very important. And where it wasn't important 5,000 years ago, it's important now. And maybe that's what he was trying to show. And now you look at the 12 tribes, you look at the Hadassah windows, you look at everything that's been done around these symbols, and Israel can say, we've been here for a long time. Just read about it. It's being well described. Anyway, that's my interpretation.
That's a good interpretation. I like that, Ed. I really like it. Yeah.
That is a good one.
You're assuming that they were what's the word I'm thinking of? That they would know what was coming down the line, down the road a piece, a long way off. I mean, in other words, you're saying this was done so that people would interpret it and know that the Jews were there for a long time anyway.
It only becomes symbolic and important now.
Right. So go back to when it was started, though. When this all happened, do you have an interpretation for why it was so specific and peculiar?
Yeah, because
Okay.
God looked at 2020 and said, how can I prove in 2020 what is the truth?
You are assuming an awful lot.
It's prophetic. It's prophetic.
It is.
I know, but I'm challenging him.
Yeah.
Challenge me, go ahead. I'm off, challenge me. I love brilliant women. So challenge me.
Don't look at me.
We're looking right at you, and Ruthie and Annie and Bracha.
No, I just find it, so interesting. And the other thing is that they weren't alone. Obviously, these are customs that have been going on. In other words, they didn't invent it. This is like something that was done before, like with the hand on the well, that gets a little kinky, but the hand that puts under the pants, which is where what they thought this was where the seat of this is where you make a promise. Wasn't this supposed to be the special place that you?
Right. It's a vulnerable place, I think, and so they.
Michael, say something, not Budo. Michael.
Yeah,
Michael.
Joseph is a wild she-ass's son. A wild she-ass's son by a spring. The wild she-ass's son at Shur. Think about it. What does he say here? Well, he says that Joseph is a she-ass's son, but he describes a spring and he describes Shur. Now, 2,000 years later, he named the place where these people belong. Kind of a historical marker. Anyway, that's me.
No, it's true. I mean, because we're going to be talking about the 12 tribes once they settle. Well, I mean, the Torah doesn't get into the settling of the land, but they get divided into tribes once they get back into the land 400 years later. And they keep that family connection, the family to each of the sons, right? And it's remarkable. It's remarkable. And it doesn't go away. That's the important. I think I say it every month or so. It's like I can't believe we're studying the same stories and looking at the same words and trying to get our minds around exactly what we're talking about here, because everything comes from this. The United States comes from this. I mean, this is something that Dr. Michael and Gary and I and some of the guys at my church were talking about, how important this was for the founders of the United States. I mean, these people were poured over the Torah. They poured over the Bible. And these things are like, they're timeless, and they're, in my mind, they're true. They actually ring true. And that's the most important thing I can think of. But Gary, what were you going to say about the curses? I thought that was interesting, that there's blessings and there's some curses, right?
To Shimon and Levi. But that's but I think that's, well, it's because he he's talking about the violence, like when they killed all the men in Shechem after the rape of Dinah. And they did this. That was their response. It says in the Torah that Jacob said nothing, like after it happened, and the sons just kind of went ahead and took revenge without the knowledge of the head of the family. And then also that he may blame them, I think, for what happened to Joseph. But the other side of it too is, I think maybe he felt a little complicit because of the fact that he had sent Joseph all alone to go look over his brothers, knowing how they resented him and couldn't stand him. And the fact that he said nothing after Dinah got raped, and his sons just went ahead and they exacted revenge. He felt embarrassed by it, and it wasn't something that he had approved of or specifically wanted to do. He wanted the way he looked to the people, to Shechem after this happened. So it's just interesting. It's really like he curses the two of them. But
as I was listening to you, my problem was that I'm reading it like for the first time. I might have read it years ago, but I mean, as of now, and looking at it again, and the more you read it, the more you understand that there were certain qualities that were assigned to these different people. These people, it's not that they are a wild she as a son, but it's the attributes of that kind of an animal. So I think, is there a way also that he is saying a blessing at the same time? In other words, if you were XYZ, you were very maybe discerning, maybe you had the courage of a mountain lion or something. Am I going a little bit too far off?
No, I don't think I think you're right.
This is what, as I kept reading it, I'm saying that these are qualities, one that he sees and another that he imparts to his sons. All right, Ed, what else do you think? You're going to challenge me?
Should we go back to the text?
Sure.
That's what we usually do.
Yeah. Because Joseph takes up a good page here, but Dr. Ed, you wanted to pick it up at through the mighty one of Jacob? Right down here.
Oh yeah. Through the mighty one of Jacob, through the shepherd, Israel's rock. By the God of your father who helps you, Shaddai who blesses you. Blessings of heaven above, blessings of the deep that lies below, blessings of breasts and womb, blessings of your father, surpass my parents' blessings, the bounty of the timeless hills. Let them be on Joseph's head, on the brow of the prince among his brothers. Benjamin is a wolf that rends in the morning, devouring the booty, in the evening, dividing the spoil. All these are the 12 tribes of Israel, and thus did their father speak to them as he blessed them, blessing each one with a blessing that befit him. And he gave them a charge, saying, when I gathered to my people, bury me with my ancestors. In a cave, this in the field of Ephraim the Hittite, the cave that is in the field of Mechpaleh, facing Marm, in the land of Canaan, the field that Abraham brought from Ephraim the Hittite as an inalienable gravesite. There they buried Abraham and his wife Sarah. There they buried Isaac and his wife Rebekah, and there I buried Leah. The purchase of the field and the cave in it was from the Hittites. When Jacob was done charging his sons, he drew his feet into the bed, and he breathed his last and was gathered to his people.
Let me ask a question in here. It takes a while before they're able to bring him to Machpelah. Do you think he was embalmed first, the way
Yeah, could be.
the Egyptians did it? Really? Don't you think so?
Yeah. You know, Machpelah is in the West Bank right now.
Uh-huh.
Right there. No?
And after the 6-day war, before the 6-day war, if you were Jewish, you were only allowed to walk up to the 7th step of the cave Machpelah. The first thing after the 6-day war is they opened up Machpelah so Jews could pray within that cave. And that was a real big deal, because I remember as a kid, my Hebrew school teachers were so upset that they could only go to the 7th step of Machpelah. And it is quite a way from Jerusalem, and it's quite a way from where they were. So,
And Ed, do we know what is the significance of the 7th step?
I don't know, but the Arab population only let people go to the 7th step.
Were they allowed to still bury people in there? Or like,
Oh no, no. It's a. In fact, the cave is up high, which was kind of interesting. So I'm not even sure it was a cave. Maybe it was. Maybe it was one of these as you drive through Israel. And Mike, you remember these. We drove through over by the Dead Sea. You could see these large caves up in the mountains.
That's right.
As we drove. I assume it's something like that.
Yeah, and that's where they found the Dead Sea Scrolls, right? We drove by there, and it was a cave that was, definitely. It was like, it had to be, I don't know, 20 feet up, and you could see holes in the sidewall of the hills there, and it's probably something like that.
Something like that.
Yeah, fascinating. All right, and I think we're gonna your question will get answered, Myrna, about the embalming. Do you want to keep going, Ed?
Sure. Where I am, 50.1, correct?
Yep.
Joseph threw himself upon his father. He wept over him and kissed him. Joseph then charged his servants, the physicians, to embalm his father. There we go. So that the physicians embalmed Israel.
Very rare.
When his
That's
40
really
days were
interesting.
completed, for it took the embalmers many days, Egypt bewailed him 70 days.
Wow.
The days of bewailing him passed, and Joseph spoke to Pharaoh's household, saying, "If I have found favor in your sight, please speak to Pharaoh and say, my father adjuring me, saying, see, I am about to die in my grave that I acquire for myself in the land of Canaan. There must you bury me. Now then, give me leave to go up and bury my father, and then I will come back." Pharaoh said, "Go up and bury your father as he adjured you."
Wow, it's amazing.
well, he definitely was embalmed.
Yeah. That's because they had to keep him preserved till he got to Israel. That's
Right. No, and I have to tell you, it probably the body would have disintegrated and smelled.
Well,
yeah, well that's obvious.
okay, there's another way of looking at this thing. In Egypt, if you were an important person, you were mummified.
Yes.
If you were poor, they wouldn't do it. And the reason for the embalming and then the mummification that takes place is that the Egyptians thought that they were getting you ready for the next life.
Right. That's true.
So the two of them were important personages. So as a result of that, they were mummified. And we must have taken him back to Canaan.
Which was against the Jewish religion now, because as you know, embalming in Michael, you can speak more to this, but they took out all They took out all
In
of
organ.
the organs. They put them in Coptic jars, and they dehydrated them with specific, and then they dehydrated the body and then wrapped the body. So
That's all part of the mummification process, yeah.
yeah, and so maybe if we can open up the tomb, we can see what he looked like.
That's true.
You first.
All right. Anything else? It's such a great thing that Jacob gets this, you know, his life. He talks about his life before coming down to Egypt, and he says, my life is, what did he call his life? Painful, bitter, something. I can't remember the exact words, but
it was interesting nonetheless. He really had
exactly.
to look back on.
He had a fascinating
life. One other interesting thing, and I hope that Ed goes along with me on this. We still don't know how the Egyptians actually mummified people.
No, they don't.
No.
Really?
I thought we did.
No.
And does anyone want to take it up at 7? And Joseph goes to bury his father. Bracha? How about Bracha? Wonderful.
Joseph then went up to bury his father. With him went all Pharaoh's officials, the elders of his palace, all the other elders of Egypt, and all Joseph's household, and his brothers, and his father's household. They left in Goshen only their little ones, their flocks and their cattle. And with him went the chariots and charioteers. So the camp was very numerous. When they reached Gor and Atad on the other side of the Jordan, they held there a great and solemn lamentation. He observed a mourning ceremony of 7 days for his father. When the land's inhabitants, the Canaanites, saw the mourning ceremony at Gor and Atad, they said, this is a solemn mourning for Egypt. And they called the place Abel Mizraim. It is on the other side of the Jordan. Thus his sons did for Jacob exactly as he had commanded them. His sons conveyed him to the land of Canaan and buried him in the cave of the field of Mechpaleh, the field that Abraham had bought as an inalienable gravesite from Ephron the Hittite facing Mamre. Joseph then returned to Egypt.
Bracha, if you can hold on for a minute. If we take a look in there, Mitzrayim means Egypt, as we know. Okay, so the Canaanites must have thought that we were Egyptians.
Oh. Joseph then returned to Egypt, he, his brothers, and all who had gone with him to bury his father. After burying his father, Joseph's brothers, seeing that their father was dead, now said, perhaps Joseph still bears us enmity and intends to repay us for all the harm that we inflicted upon him. So they brought a charge to Joseph, saying, your father left this charge before his death, saying, thus shall you say to Joseph, please, I beg of you, forgive the transgression of your brothers and their sin, though they inflicted harm upon you. Yet now, please forgive the transgression of the servants of your father's God. Joseph wept as they spoke to him. His brothers also prostrated themselves before him and said, here we are, your slaves. Joseph said to them, have no fear, for am I in place of God? Though you intended me harm, God intended it for good in order to accomplish what is now the case, to keep alive a numerous people. Now, therefore, have no fear. I will provide for you and your little ones. Thus did he comfort them, and speak straight to their hearts.
You know, I have a question in here, or a question, an observation. Mm-hmm. They made that up, didn't they? Because Joseph never said anything like that. I mean, he had no
intention.
Yeah,
they said that because they wanted to be forgiven. That's
right. But he had no intention of doing anything negative. Right. I mean, he forgave them a long time ago.
Yeah, he said this a couple chapters back. And
For
Is
some
anyone
reason,
counting?
they still had guilt, I think.
Well, I think they felt without the father's protection, they could be subject to punishment. But
Right.
it was very simple. You weren't going to do it.
Right, and I was counting roughly, and this might be the fourth or fifth time the brothers actually bow down and prostrate themselves, and especially after. I mean, at this point, they're really just trying to save their necks.
That's what I think.
Because
Yeah.
if you really
I
think
think they
about it,
still felt guilty.
they
Have you
felt
ever
guilty.
done something where you repeat something over and over again because you feel guilty? That's why it keeps on coming up. I think that's my personal.
I think so too.
Yeah.
And I think that they misread Joseph all the time. I mean, here's Joseph, one of the most forgiving people in all of Torah, at this point anyway, and I mean, he said this before too. Have no fear. Am I in the place of God? God intended it for good. God intended it for good. Like, as much harm that came upon Joseph in the prison, getting sold into slavery, getting thrown into the pit, and getting all this stuff. It's like, I feel like right here Joseph is kind of carrying Jacob's spirit, carrying that father's faith with him, because Jacob had that same kind of faith. And the brothers, I feel like, were still caught up in this Esau mentality, this wild, ass of a man who's will sell his birthright for a bowl of porridge. And here's Joseph saying, here, don't you guys get it? And I feel like Joseph really does kind of incorporate both Jacob and Esau, because he allows Jacob to be the head, to be his head and his real driving, where he's going to go. He's just going to follow how Jacob followed God. But he also uses that Esau energy underneath him to direct how things are going to go for the famine. And I think it's an incredible persona Joseph has, and of course he's so locked in with his father, and to have his father come back and then die in his arms. And this is really just even though the father blesses all of the sons, it's really the story of Jacob and Joseph saying goodbye to his dad, who he really had only seen maybe not even half of his life. It's such a phenomenal story. I could go on.
The interesting thing is that we commented before on the fact that Joseph's maturity, caused him to forgive the brothers. He was much more mature than they, and they still are coming back questioning it, because they themselves, if the shoe were on the other foot, they would be SOBs. I'm sorry. They would have done not what Joseph did. They would have done the other. They were not as nice.
And this really shows something that caught me also.
Yeah.
How powerful a person Jacob was, their dad. Remember, the 10 Commandments, honor thy father and mother, has not yet come for hundreds of years from now, but they still were afraid of their dad. And when we talk about the Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob as being the center of the origins of Judaism, his father must have been a heck of a guy, because they were afraid of him and they wouldn't even think of doing anything until he died, and lying until he died.
Good point. All right, let's turn the page. Keep going, Bracha, please, if you'd like.
Yeah, I have a thought connected to what you were saying before.
Absolutely.
Whenever Jacob said, when he made reference to my sword, my arch, my bow, that's that other side. What he really means is my prayer and my request. That's
his strength.
The other side of him. This is what you were saying before, that there's the duality.
Yeah, I like that. I like that a lot. Yeah, it's like his strength. His strength is his sword, but it's his faith.
Yes. It's not a sword and an arch or a bow. That's not what it is. It's a prayer. It's a request to Hashem.
Wow.
That's what he has. That's what he's giving over, what he's bequeathing. Okay, Joseph dwelt in Egypt, he and his father's household, and Joseph lived 110 years. Joseph saw Ephraim's grandchildren, the children of Machir too. Menashe's son were born on Joseph's knees. Joseph then said to his kin, I am dying, but God will surely take care of you and bring you up out of this land to the land that God promised to Abraham, to Isaac, and to Jacob. Joseph adjured Israel's children, saying, God will surely take care of you. Bring my bones up from this place. Joseph died aged 110 years. They involved him put into a coffin in Egypt.
Wow. I think that's the end. I believe that's the end.
Yep, that's the end.
Yep. Wow. That ends Genesis. Whoa. I love what you were saying about that, Braca, too, because it's surely without faith, where would he be? Where would he be? That was his strength, his whole strength, his whole thing. I love it. I love it. Any other thoughts? Annie, you were so quiet tonight.
Can I ask you a question?
Yes.
When they brought Jacob back to the land of Canaan, where he was supposed to be buried, one thing I noticed is that they mourned for him for 7 days. Is that the first time we ever hear of mourning for 7 days, or has it come up before? I mean, it's like we said Shiva for 7 days, and this is sort of like a precursor to it. So I wanted to know, was this a custom before or then, or when did that custom come up of a 7 days of mourning?
Where do you see 7 days of mourning?
Well, when we went back and they said all the people looked and they saw like this Egyptian funeral, and they were burying Jacob, and it said at that point, mourning, he observed
Number 10.
a ceremony of 7 days for his father.
There you go. Oh, wow. Wow.
I want to know if that's the first time we ever hear that, or did I miss something from before? Because it's the same custom we have today.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I don't remember
Good
hearing
point.
that before.
Good point.
Did anyone hear that? Wow.
You know what's so wonderful? No matter how many times we read this over, we always get something different out of it.
It's true.
So wonderful.
It's so true. What were you going to say, Annie? What were you going to say?
I was just saying that I was listening because I'm longing to be in Israel and see all these places that you guys talk about, and all the meaning that they have. I want to go so badly that I just think about that when we're reading these.
It's remarkable.
Well, make your plans.
Yeah. I felt like we got in there just in time in 2019. My goodness.
Oh God, you're right.
We just
Right.
got in under the
things
gun.
will get better again near the end of 2021. That's what I say.
That's true.
Really scary though. This COVID thing is.
Yeah, but you got to look to the future and not worry about the present. You got to keep on looking at what's hopeful for the future.
That's right.
I have to get through the present though. I'm sorry. No, it's very encouraging because you never know how many people you reach, or if you don't reach them. Thank goodness no one's argued with me yet, though. I would be crushed.
Okay. All righty.
If anyone wants to stay, I got a great story about Michael Chagall painting.
Oh, of course, we want to hear that.
Yeah, that's
That would be
right.
great.
That's right. You're going to share that. Yeah.
For about 25 years in a row, I went to the American Heart Association meetings, research meetings, and they're one of 4 cities. And one of the most interesting one I went to many, many, many times was in New Orleans. And if you've ever been to New Orleans, they have a huge art district. And I happened to bump into a physician, a cardiologist, who wanted to tell me a story. And he said, I remember seeing you in New Orleans. I was walking around the day before the meeting, just killing time. And I walked into art studio, and there was an original Chagall painting. He said, remind you, I was a resident making very little money. And a resident is a student. He was a fellow, rather, a student cardiologist. And he went and he looked at it. He said, how much is this picture? This is magnificent. And the man said, well, it's $25,000, but I need the money. If you can give me $10,000 for this, I will sell it. And here he was, a fellow. And he called his wife at home and he said, honey, I see this picture. It's magnificent. Can we buy it? And she said, we only have $11,000 in our savings. You can't do that. You're not making any money now. You're just a fellow. You're not done with your schooling. He put his head down and said, no, thank you. And he walked out and he said, I got 2 blocks away and my wife called me and she said, you know, I have a feeling. Would you go back and buy it? Buy that painting and I will wire the money to him today. Well, he just said, okay. And he went back and he bought the painting. They wired him the money. He sent the painting home. By the end of the American Heart Association meeting that day, Chagall died.
Wow.
Oh,
Oh my.
oh my
Price
God.
just went skyrocketing.
Wow, it just went sky high.
And he was offered by the same company $50,000.
Oh my God.
Did he sell?
No, I bumped into him again when he was in Albany, and he would never talk to anybody from the research groups of the pharmaceutical companies, but he was so glad to see me. He said, you got to come to the house and see the Chagall, which I did not do. But anyway, he told me the story. He said, God was looking over me and my wife.
That's incredible.
So anyway, that's my Chagall story.
That's a great story. Wow, that's a fabulous story.
Isn't it great?
That's great.
Is this the Fiddler on the Roof?
This is Chagall. Yeah, this is the
I know, but
1912
he's on the roof.
painting.
Fiddler on the Roof.
That's exactly it. It inspired Fiddler on the Roof.
Hey,
Very nice.
I didn't know that Chagall had painted Gary.
Playing a violin.
Yeah, violin with
Well,
a
Hey, Gary, that guy really looks like
Very
you.
interesting evening.
Yes.
And I wish all of you a
Different
very
kind of
happy and a healthy new year.
And
Yes.
thank you all.
That's
so
right.
much.
When we meet again, it'll be next year on Shabbat. So that's right. Next year will be Shabbat.
Be well, everybody.
Be well. Take
Good
care.
night.
God bless. Good night.
Good night.